I too listened carefully to my competitors, and in the spirit of inclusivity, I will endeavor to incorporate some of their ideas. This is because the election was not a contest between a good dream and a bad dream. It was a contest between two competing visions. I believe that those who voted...
All right, and that was that message about inclusion and incorporation of some of the ideas by the opposition coalition, NASA, made by President Uhuru Kenyatta in his speech yesterday. And Honorable Kosi Tan, just what is the commitment or the role of Parliament and the majority leaders in Parliament in uniting the country moving forward, even as House business begins?
Well, the role of Parliament in uniting the country is actually a very key role. But, and we are ready as the majority leaders or the majority in the House to welcome ideas and incorporate ideas from our brothers that will take this country forward. The key thing is that the competition was for the competition we went through, or rather the electoral process that we went through, was for us to get leadership, which we already have. We have a president, we have members of parliament, we have senators, we have MCAs, we have governors, we have people in all categories, and we are waiting for His Excellency the President, who we congratulate having been sworn in yesterday, to appoint members of cabinet, and then we start setting the ball rolling. And in his speech yesterday, like the clip you have just played, the President was very clear. He says he will incorporate some of the ideas from his competitors, because they could have had some ideas which were better than what we had in Jubilee, and we will, whatever is going to take this country forward, we are going to incorporate and move it. But as a committee of, as a Parliament, we know that a lot of work in Parliament is not done in the chamber, debating chamber. It is done in the committee stages. So we really have lost a lot of time waiting for NASA to put their house in order. We are happy that somehow it is in order now. So we are ready for them to, we form the committees, and then we start building the nation. All
right, and Honorable Owino, that was a clear extension of an olive branch, an olive leaf by President Uhuru Kenyatta to have, you know, that cooperation in having that development agenda, saying that he is willing to have his government incorporate some of the ideas by the opposition. And what would NASA require to heed to this call?
You see, the problem we have is dishonesty. When Obama took over in the US, actually the agenda he implemented, most of them, was a Republicans' agenda. Because they were good, but the implementation was wrong. Incorporating ideas means you brought in when the ideas had already been baked and fermented. I would have loved the president to say, we will sit down at the table and fashion up the ideas so that when the implementation comes in the parliament, the ownership is there for everyone. But you see, we have heard these words before. I think this is where the problem is. In his first inauguration was a very good speech. But if these speeches does not translate to actions, then you kind of lose the trust from the people. For example, if you look at the past government appointments, employments, distribution of resources, it was majorly done to one community. Now, for us to have the same speech, we have to reserve our trust again. But the only way Kenyans can do better is if their assembly, the National Assembly, detaches themselves from the executive arm so that they don't pick agenda from State House and come and implement as it is. I'm not just saying what has not been done. You saw how the act was quickly rushed and became law because it was picked up from State House. The legislation, the legislative arm is what protects the rights, protects the Constitution, and also promotes the democratic governance. But what we see is the interference with the executive. If it becomes an arm of the executives, then there's no way the current parliament will unite Kenyans. For example, yesterday, we had killings in Eastlands, including a 7-year-old. Today, I was waiting for the Jubilee legislators to stand up and condemn. Nothing came from them. All the condemnation came from the NASA team. Loss of life is not a simple thing that people should mum. So again, that is the seriousness of partisanship in the House. So what I'm trying to say, so long as the House can stand up and deal with national issues as they are, not as they cooked from another arm, it will be very difficult to unite this nation.
Right, and Honorable Kositany, Honorable Owino brings up a very important issue, really, which up to half the country, really, the population of the country will be looking to the legislature. Is it independent? Is it looking at the interest of Kenyans from its own legislative agenda without being a rubber stamp of the executive? And in the past, this really has not come out clearly in the sense of the legislature is operating on its own mind. Is this a thought that is already simmering in this new majority leadership in Parliament?
I think, Sharon, we are almost losing the point here. We go into a political contest in order to get leadership, and I said that before. We have our president, we have his deputy, and we have our members of parliament, our senators, and our governors. We have an agenda. We have a manifesto that we want to implement as Jubilee. So we're not taking instructions from anywhere, and even if we are, there's no problem with it so long as we're taking it from the leadership that we elected, the leadership that we voted in. So we are going to run this country in implementing the Jubilee Manifesto, led by the President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto, and that is it. When they say that Mheshimiwa there says that we went to State House and the list, or rather the laws that were passed came from State House. Even if they came from State House, they are laws for Kenyans. We passed them in Parliament, we passed them in public. We debated them, and they went through the legal process that was required. They have come up with a list today of only 4 names for the leadership of the House, and they have disputed it, their own list, which they're claiming that, did you see any Jubilee member disputing that list? Our only concern we raised is that you should have considered women. How do you appoint John Buddy as the leader of majority, and his neighboring constituency is run by Junet, a neighboring MP from a neighboring constituency, the same county, as a leader of, and you leave out Ukambani, which voted overwhelmingly for Raila Odinga. You leave out Coast. In the entire coastal region, we have 2 members of parliament, Honorable Mwashetani and Honorable Naomi Shaban. And I think we have 1 women rep and the governor. The rest, about 17 or something of them, are ODM. And they were left out. I didn't know there were squatters in the party. So I think ODM should sort out the issues they have within their coalition, and let us, as Jubilee, bring in issues that will drive this country forward. And as the president said yesterday, whoever has an idea, let him bring it, so long as it is an idea that will work for the good of this nation.
All right, and that brings the question of what is that framework of the sharing of ideas, whereas it is the Jubilee government, and the coalition has really talked about moving forward and being a government for all, even those who did not vote for them. So what is the place of incorporating, and what is that framework? Perhaps I'll involve you, Owino, in that. What would be that framework for sharing of some of the manifestos and agenda that was in the opposition agenda moving forward in the legislature, in the legislative house?
It all comes to a dialogue. We have been pressing for dialogue, and many people think dialogue is settling for Nusmukate and all these kind of views. Dialogue is getting to know what the other opinion is and digesting. You see, you can have your own opinion. It doesn't mean that it is all perfect. In fact, if you cross the line and add to the other person, you may find that you are implementing a better program, better project, and all that. That framework you're asking, the word incorporation, as I said, is jumping on a train which is already moving. But what we are trying to say as Kenyans is that let's sit down. Even if it is your manifesto, you are going to implement it in my constituency. You need to hear what I'm going to say or how best we can implement it. That's what we are saying. If we can have a roundtable discussion through leadership or whatever mechanism can be used, but let it ferment from the beginning. We also have our manifesto. We can look at them, the two of them, and marry them. This is what it is to have a national discussion. It does not take away your dignity because you are discussing your manifesto with the position. No, in fact, it edifies what you are trying to do. Then the ownership, when people own something, you expect 100% participation. But if you go alone and ask others to tag along, that's where the problem is. And I just want to also, in a respective way to Constantine, you see now, when somebody is offering an idea, really, it is not an instruction. This is where we go wrong. Even in a family, when a child says something, don't take it as a disrespect, that he shouldn't speak that way. Listen to what he has to say and make it better if you have to.
All right, and we just want to listen to a soundbite that was played earlier by Honorable John Badi, and then we continue with that conversation.
The only committee we are not going to put our members in is a committee on appointments. In the spirit of our coalition, we have internally discussed, and the matter is sorted out. We will give 4 names tomorrow from NASA coalition, from the leader of minority office.
And of course, we saw that happening today. And maybe just to engage you, Honorable Kositany, on the majority agenda, even as the House goes back to business, what would be some of those pressing legislative issues that would be pressing for discussion in the House?
Well, we have a lot, as I said, we have a lot on our hands as a Jubilee government. One of the key things that is coming into Parliament is actually the funding of the county governments. We need to really look at how the funding is going and how the county governments are running the systems are running. We have an issue of, I know we've had an issue of teachers going on strike, lecturers going on strike. Those are some of the key issues that will come up once we have the budget committee in place so that we sort out a lot of the things that are affecting Kenyans. We are happy we sorted out the free day secondary school issues, and now we have that money in the budget, and I think from January, our students and our kids will be able to learn enjoy free education in secondary schools, day secondary schools. Actually, the key word here is day. Mm-hmm. and a lot of other problems. We have a lot of infrastructure problems. We have the railway expansion on the way down to Kisumu. And when people talk of exclusion, we wonder if we really wanted to exclude, we should have built that railway towards Eldoret or even towards Kericho. But we are taking it to Kisumu, and we know very well who controls, or rather, who enjoys the majority support in Kisumu. But we are building Kenya as one nation, not according to the way they voted. So we have a lot coming up.
All right, and Honorable Owino, what is your strategy now as the minority members of the House? As earlier you had indicated that you would not participate in some of the activities, especially in passing and vetting the names of those proposed to be members of the cabinet as will be proposed.
I think our minority leader has shown the light here. We did put 4 names. And I think there is also a House issue that when NASA is debating on who to be where and bring it up, it should be respected as such. We didn't criticize Jubilee, however, we also see faults in them, but that is the best they could do. So because of these pressing needs, especially the county government's allocation, revenue allocation is paralyzing the county government operations. We will team up and get all this done, including the school fees and all that on Kositany have talked about. There are some things that's hurting Kenyans, and more so what has brought us in is that Jubilee has realized that they cannot go alone. I said in the beginning that is why we were dragging our feet, because let's see how they would do business. And they saw they could not do business without NASA. But there is immediate agenda, acute agenda that we should team in as a National Assembly and dispose of.
All right. And Honorable Kositan, there have been questions or calls asking whether the House would reconsider reconvening earlier other than the 10-week break that is about to take place from the 7th of December, especially to talk about issues to do with the schools, budgets, and going back to schools, legislation of the education system in the country. Would this be something that the House would be willing to reconsider?
Yes, as members of Parliament, we were elected and we are there to serve Kenyans. And any time that we are called upon, it doesn't matter the season, it doesn't matter what other priorities we have. Personally, and I know a lot of my fellow legislators are ready to drop anything and come back to Parliament when called upon to come and legislate on issues that will move this country forward.
Right. Honorable Owino?
Yes. If they carry short, it's even better, because we have as well our manifestos that we put forward to the community we are representing, and they are held up because of this stalemate. And I believe there are a lot, especially for Ndewa people, that I'm struggling to push through. So I don't need 10 weeks break. If we can review it and get to work as soon as possible and reduce those holidays, so to speak, I'll be good to go.
All right. And maybe lastly, my last question to both of you gentlemen would be the goodwill that both the minority and majority members of Parliament are willing to showcase in the conduct of the House, the business of the House moving forward, coming at a time where the country is really divided. Just speaking to you, Honorable Kositan, what would be this? How would this display of goodwill be showcased by the majority, and what is your expectation from the minority members?
I think Sharon, His Excellency the President Uhuru Kenyatta, in his speech yesterday, and even the Deputy President, made it very clear that yesterday's event marked the culmination and the end of the political contest and empty rhetoric for our nation. It marks the end of politics. We are now ready to move forward and build the nation. So I think as a Jubilee government, we are ready to embrace anybody who is ready to move on with us, and let us stop issues of resist, let us stop issues of false hopes of we're going to have another swearing-in ceremony. We know now we have a legitimate president who has gone through the whole process, election process, and has been declared and has been sworn in. So I think it is time for NASA to swallow their pride. We're happy that they are back in Parliament, and we're very happy that they are. And tomorrow they'll be giving the 4 names that are required for the various committees, and we are going to move forward. And I think it's actually on us, Jubilee, we've been waiting for NASA to realize that the election period is over. It's time to build the nation, and we are ready to embrace them and let them join us as we move forward.
Right, and Honorable Owino, very briefly, way forward, and what is your expectation from both your minority coalition and from your counterparts in the majority as you begin the business of the House?
The minority coalition has been very patient with Jubilee, tyranny of numbers. And in fact, we have conducted ourselves very well. What I would like us to do is to respect each other. And more so, as they always say, when you are picking oranges, you have to respect who planted them. Raila Amolo Odinga has served and has really fought for the liberation after liberation. And sometimes how they are referred to by the majority leader, Duale, and Murkomen, cannot be tolerated. I would ask those 2 leaders really to think first what they can say, if it is uniting or dividing. So respect and conducting ourselves with decorum in that house can send a lot of positive waves to the whole nation.
All right. Many thanks, gentlemen, for joining me on The Big Story tonight. I've been speaking to Honorable Caleb Kositanyi, who's a Member of Parliament for Soy constituency, and Honorable Martin Owino, who is the Ndhiwa Member of Parliament. A big thank you to you. And that's where we wrap up the show tonight, The Big Story. Many thanks for watching. My name is Sharon Momanyi. Have a pleasant night, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Goodbye.